The moment of self-realization, enlightenment, is a powerful, unique, and undescribable moment. And yet, this character, Simcha, will try to describe in words that particular moment, what led to this particular moment, what it felt like for the character, and what it is like after this transformation which cannot be described. And if this moment, unexpectedly and with immense grace, has happened to a separate form, a character like Simcha, an ordinary woman who lives an ordinary life, it can happen to anyone in any given moment. So this moment, which retrospectively and paradoxically, when you look from the point of view of all nothingness, has never occurred, never was a moment in which there was a separate form which existed and she realized something and it changed her into this all nothingness. This moment, split second, has never occurred because there was never a separate form. There is never a state which is different from being this all nothingness. So this moment, logically, in the logic of this all nothingness, can never occur. She knows that there are many methods and practices and ways, and there are who claims that enlightenment is a gradual process, but she can only testify and tell and share her unique and specific story. This is all she can do, and hope that you will learn something out of it, or be inspired, or be hopeful that if it has happened to her, it can happen to anyone. So the exact date this transformation has occurred was 15th December 2018. The time was approximately 5. It was the time that the sun was setting. She was driving, Simcha was driving. This moment happened in a car. Prior to this moment, she had an intensive, nerve-wracking, trying week. And in this week, she felt every emotion possible that a human can feel. The whole range, starting from grief over her friend's daughter that died at the age of 22, up to the immense joy of her daughter's bat mitzvah, which is a great celebration with the entire great family, and the compassion in an enormous event that her husband has created for disabled children, where they drove cars. So there was not a second during that week that she didn't feel something very, very intensely and had to process it and work through it. And all these emotions came with so much work. She was so busy. Physically, she had to run from one place to another place and lift things and work hard. And she had to be very, very focused on what she was doing all the time, because there was no time for errors or no time for processing, and no time for her to think, what the hell is happening this week? What is happening? How come that all these events happen simultaneously? And there was never a moment in which she can just feel sorry for herself that she has to go through everything in such an intensity, because there was not a wasted second on that week. So that moment came at the end of this week, of this unbelievably trying week. It was like final exams after you had studied for many, many years. And this is the conclusion that I can think why this week has happened prior to this moment and how it led to this moment, because the years that came before this week were kind of like this week, but in smaller portions. This ability to be there for others and to work very hard and to really feel everything that happens, she built that ability slowly during the years. And it was like studying for a great final exam, which came in the form of that week. And luckily, I think she was ready and well prepared, because she has experienced so many things in the years that came prior to this week and prior to this moment. And when she came to the weekend, which was Saturday, in Israel, Saturday is the day that you rest. But she didn't rest, because there was one more thing she had to do in order for everything to be done completely, like what her chores were, what her obligations were, what her life looked like, and what she has to do. And this was a very pleasant chore: go and visit her brother who lives alone. And she didn't have time for him that week, so she took this day of rest and she drove to his house, which was not very far from hers. This brother is very special. He knows how to listen. And this is what he did that weekend, because after this intensive week, Simcha went to visit him, and this was Saturday. She was sitting in his living room. They were drinking coffee, and he was sitting and drinking the coffee, and the sun was so beautiful outside. And she called us, "Why are you sitting inside the room? Go and see how beautiful nature is this time of year. Everything is blooming." So they decided to go for a drive to a nearby hill, small hill. And they went to this hill. We parked the car and climbed on the hill. It was very, very beautiful. Everything was green, flourishing, silent. The birds, the trees, the leaves. And Simcha had so much to tell. And so she did. Simcha talked on that hill with her brother for nearly 3 hours straight. There were so many dramatic events and feelings she had to describe, and she enjoyed just sharing them, just letting them out. She didn't leave one detail untold. He didn't answer so much, he just listened and listened. And she ended this description, and he looked at her at that hill and he said, "Wow, this sounds so hard." And Simcha was so happy. She said to him, "It wasn't hard, it was beautiful. It was so beautiful to see everything, this immense range of human expression, beauty, sadness, and happiness and compassion. It was nothing, it was beautiful. It wasn't hard for her." And this was what she felt. She didn't feel like someone was taking advantage of her or something bad was happening. She felt like she was in the right place at the right time, and she's doing what she should be doing, and everything corresponds to these actions, and she's doing well, and everything is well, even if it's hard, even if it's a sad story, and it's a terrible story, it is beautiful. This talk on this beautiful hill left nothing unsaid or untold. And when she came back to her car on the way back home, knowing that at her house still all the family remains from the great celebration of the bat mitzvah, and she has to go to her friend's house, she has many, many things to do. She knew that, but she got inside this car and knew that there is nothing she has to do for another 20 minutes until she gets to her house. And on Saturday in Israel, there are not many cars on the road. It's not like there are traffic jams and you see other people in the cars. The road was kind of empty, like open for her. Ever since she was a child, Simcha really liked to see the electricity poles, the wires on the electricity poles. When she looked out of the window as a child, when someone was driving, she would follow this wire with her eyes in the movement of the car until it reached the next pole. It was like, it's like a meditation, because she loved that movement so much. It was like a wire, it stops with a pole and then another wire, and it stops with a pole. It's like a beautiful, beautiful movement. And so she was driving and observing these poles just accompanying her. The road was accompanying her. It was empty. The sun was setting, so everything was so beautiful. It was like the magic hour, the most beautiful time of day. And of course, as always, she turned up the radio. She was alone. There was no need to be considerate or take anyone else into consideration. Normally, Simcha looks at who she's with and tries to see what he needs, because she was such a person, a very empathic person, who always placed the needs of others in front of his. But this was when she was a character. Now she knows that why she did that, and she still does that, but from a different point of view, and sometimes she doesn't do that if it's not necessary. But prior to this moment, she took everything into consideration, mainly when there was someone sitting next to her, what he feels, what he needs, if this song on the radio is good for him, never what she wants. But when she was alone, she was free to take this volume of the radio up, sit back, and just enjoy a very peaceful, well-earned 20 minutes of break. So when Simcha reached the main road, shortly after she left her brother's house, nothing was on the way. She could just press on the gas and drive. This was the moment that this thing that I will try to describe has happened. The song, like in the movie, it's an Israeli song, has started to play. And from the very first note, it is a strong guitar, very specific, strong opening. So she knew that song so well. She knew it from the very first sound of the song. I don't know. You can hear this song. I will put a link to it in the description. But you can feel, even if you don't understand Hebrew, you can feel the vibe it gives. It's like beginning of something. So this guitar started, And she relaxed more into her seat because she thought, now with this song and these circumstances, I want or need nothing. I am empty. I told everything, I did everything. I don't need anything just to drive. And this was such a comfortable, amazing feeling, just sitting there and driving. Empty. Empty from the need to obsess about what happened or what will happen. And inside this beginning of the song came with this beginning of the song a great silence. And then Oshik Levi, the singer, started to sing. Of course, she knew and loved this singer ever since she was a child. He's older than her. He has the most familiar voice to the character. He sounds like her uncles, her favorite uncles. He has a very warm, loving, tender voice. And he sang the first line. And the first line said, a white car is driving on the road. And Simcha's Jeep was white, and I was on the road. And this was very nice when he sang that line. So Simcha relaxed more into this feeling of, oh, this is so right, everything is so right. He describes me now. And then he continued to the next 3 lines, which describe how the car drives in the road. And there are eucalyptus trees that sometimes it hides behind them and then it reappears. And Simcha looked to the right and saw the great eucalyptus trees on the side of the road. And this was very, very beautiful to see that he describes what is happening to her right now. After this first verse, she was very, very relaxed and very focused on the music that came from the radio. It was still a music coming from the radio and still a mind perceiving the music that comes from the radio. But this was the last fluttering of the duality in the character's life. And this was the last time she identified something as hers and not hers. There is a song, there is a person, there is a car. This was the last time it happened in the story. When the verse was playing, the first 4 lines of and the quietness started to grow. There was something that it was not a voice, because Simcha never heard voices in her mind, but it was something beyond her normal perception that was saying, don't stop this. Don't make the effort to stop this. Don't do anything, let it happen. And this let it happen, I think it was referring to a peaking moment Simcha had 20 years earlier when she was driving in a car, great fields of wheat, and she was listening to another very strange song, and this quietness started to wrap her and become this thing, and she stopped that process because she was sitting with her husband and her baby, and she couldn't focus. She couldn't focus on and let it happen. And this time, this thing says, you must. And this time, no one was there to interrupt her. She could just let it happen. And she was very brave because the character's final moments were okay, let's see what, bring it on. I've had so many things happen to me this week. I know I can deal with everything. I passed the test. What do you want from me? You want to do something? Something has to happen. Okay, I trust it. Whatever it is, I can take it. And this thing was also saying, don't stop this. Whatever it is, I can handle it. What's the worst thing that can happen to the character? And then the chorus came. And the chorus says one simple sentence. Do you remember we were there like we were inside or in a movie? And the song describes a couple that is driving in the car, and the man says to the woman, this moment is so beautiful. Do you remember that moment? It was like so beautiful. We were like characters inside a movie. But when this line started to play on the radio, this was the exact moment that this thing acted. It was active. This was the moment that this great silence came very intensely. It wasn't coming from anywhere specific. It was surrounding the character, Simcha's character. But it had volume. It was not silence as she knew what silence is. It was something very, very different. It is this silence, which is she is now. This is it. But then the character didn't know this silence, this essence, this being, this thing, and this process of breaking the separate form into the tiniest bits possible, that you discover that there were never any bits. It wasn't shattered, but for the sake of description, she will describe it as the shattering of the separate form. That was the specific moment that it happened, because the lyrics just said so. The thing said to itself the highest truth possible. It said it in such a simple way, in words, relatable, knowable words to the character, and it repeated the message. The message was, do you remember we were there like we were in the movie? And Simcha, the character, studied filmmaking. This is what she studied, and this is her line of work for 24 years. This is what she does. She can write scripts, she can edit, she can direct, she knows how to take the elements and create a moment, for the moment to be funny, for the moment to be very emotional. She knows how to do that. She knows how it works, how the illusion works. This is what she studied, how to create this illusion in films. So the metaphor was right up her alley, like you say. It was her metaphor. Maybe someone who is working with, I don't know, trees, there will be a song about trees, or a dance about trees, or something else that is related to his understanding of what is going on. In Simcha's particular story, this metaphor was the most accurate metaphor possible for her to just, like with a hammer, to understand this. And this metaphor is also being used to describe what is this illusion. It's like in the Matrix. It's an illusion. It's the thing that you see on the screen. It's not real. So this sentence was so simple. And it said two things. Do you remember? And we were there like we were in a movie. And we were there like we were in a movie explains that this reality just said that aloud. This reality is not real. It's like a movie. Everything you see around you, it's the same illusion that you create as a filmmaker. This is it. And the other part of the sentence was, do you remember? And the do you remember was so powerful because Simcha didn't have to be reminded, because it happened, everything happened simultaneously. It was more than a split of a second to be that thing. This is what it took, a split second of realizing everything. Because when it says, do you remember, she didn't remember because there was no one to remember. No separate form who remembers that she was in the illusionary world. This was after the great transformation. It happened simultaneously. So the first time he said that sentence was the great understanding. And he repeats that sentence 4 times, and it was like, okay, now I'm not a separate character sitting inside. I'm not Simcha. I'm not listening to the radio. There is no song on the radio. I'm not being reminded. I'm everything, and I remind myself, and I drive. This looks like I'm driving and listening to the radio, but everything is changed. And there are many descriptions about this moment from many ancient traditions and religion, and they all describe like very intense energy, like, I don't know, something about the pineal gland or the Kundalini rises and everything. I think it's true because it was, energetically speaking, very, very powerful. The quietness had volume. It was very, very intense. Very, very, very intense. And she realized everything and became everything. And she continued driving because it was the most logical thing to do, to just keep on driving. Because she realized everything. And when you are in the state of knowing all, being everything, you don't need to do anything to process it or to deal with it or to think about it. Just you realize what you are, and oh, in this current moment I'm a figure driving the car and it needs to go back to his house, so this is what we'll do. And even though it was very, very natural for the character, and it came and the song continued and everything was so peaceful, Simcha cannot emphasize or describe how energetically powerful this moment is. So intense. It's something you never experienced before. Simcha never experienced such intensity, such energy, such quietness, such undescribable power over the character. So if she was not ready, so prepared, she could think she was either dying or going crazy, like they should put her in an asylum or something because no one can feel this thing or be this thing. But she was so prepared and relaxed that all this intense energy was just natural for her. So she continued to drive, and all this understanding of what she is and what the world is was beautifully portrayed in the next 2 songs that accompanied her on the way to the house. There were funny Israeli songs. One of them was about a candid camera, and the lyrics went, "You were so gullible, You thought everything around you is true. Smile, you are in the movie. This is a song about a candid camera, about a funny film. She also knew this song. It's very funny, and she laughed because it was this great laughter which she is right now. How could she believe this candid, foolish camera? How does humanity believe this? When you see the behind the scenes, it's hard for you to think that you believe that. Like the magician, it tells you it's tricks, so you can never see the trick again and believe it. And then you think, oh, I'm so stupid. How could I believe this magic? It's a magic trick. It's not real. I thought it was true, but now I can see the mechanism. Oh, I was so gullible. There was a point on the way back home, just on the curve next to the gas station, when Simcha realized she was staying in this non-existent reality. She knew, and she knows now, that nothing around her really exists. Her family does not exist. She does not exist. The world does not exist. This camera does not exist. There is only great emptiness, stillness, and this is the state. And yet, this thing continued driving, knowing this futileness and this uselessness of this staying. Why? Why staying? So it appears like she's here. She's not. You're not. That moment was the exact moment that this or nothingness knew itself, recognized itself. That was the end of the game. That is the point. That remains. And this is the point. We are here right now.